So, gentlemen, first, beginning again with Hubert Ansah, Acting Director, Hydrological Services Department. What do you know about this, sea defense project? At a point, there was a resettlement. Some we're told how many homes were built for some people, and they were moved away as the project was ongoing. What do you know about it? And what do you know about why it's taking forever to get this done?
Thank you. First, I would like us to get a clear distinction between the projects so far undertaken in the Keta area. In fact, the current issue is to do with the Blekuso Sea Defense Project, for which the first phase has been completed. From 1997 to 2004, the Keta Sea Defense Project was undertaken. And I see that it seems there's a confusion between the Keta Sea Defense Project and the Blekuso Sea Defense Project. In fact, what is at stake now is under the Blekuso Sea Defense Project. So the Keta Sea Defense Project was undertaken from 1997 to 2004. Subsequently, the ministry from 2010 undertook what we called the Atoko Jita Anyanui Sea Defense Project. That was done under 3 phases. Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3, undertaken by Michels Amandi Holdings. So far, the Ministry of Works and Housing has undertaken the Keta Sea Defense Project from 1997 to 2004, the Atoko Jita Anyanui Sea Defense Project from 2010 to roughly 2014, and then the Blekuso Sea Defense Project from 2015 to 2019. That's the first phase.
Is it the Keta Sea Defense project that we got $100 million for, and it was supposed to be done in 3 phases, and for which Kufuor's administration completed the first phase, spending $54 million?
For the Keta Sea Defense Project, the project cost was about $90 million US. Feasibility studies were undertaken from 1997 to 1999. Construction of works from 1999 to 2004. So as the earlier speaker said, there was continuity when there was change of government.
Yeah, President Kufuor had cause to speak about it in 2016, and he pointed to $100 million for a 3-phased project, and the first phase completed under him at $54 million.
Please, let's look at it this way. Total amount was about $90 million US. And the scope of works, we had construction of sea defense structure to protect about 9-kilometer stretch. construction of road about 8.3 kilometers, reclamation of land of about 240 hectares, and also the construction of a flood control structure. So this was what was done under the Keta Sea Defense Project.
And it is the first phase that was done.
Well, under the project, we had Keta Sea Defense Project. Maybe following that, other works could have been done. And in fact, the Blekusu Sea Defense Project is a continuation, in fact, by location of the Keta Sea Defense Project.
Okay.
Yes, by location.
Yeah, any explanation why we don't have the sea defense project complete over all this while, and the storm surge is wreaking this havoc?
The ministry has completed the first phase, as we all know, from 2015 to 2019. And the ministry had and has plans to undertake the second phase. But I would like to make this clear. Problems related to coastal erosion in Ghana. One major problem is the larger expenditure for coastal protection to prevent damage. The larger expenditure for coastal protection to prevent damage. And in fact, Ghana's coastline is about 550 kilometers. And out of this 550 kilometers, about 2/3 is under beach erosion. So we have problems all over. And for that matter, the ministry is making effort to implement projects to solve all these problems.
You say the larger expenditure has to be put into prevention, correct?
Yeah, in other words, to implement coastal protection works. It's very expensive.
Okay. And
yes.
And that comes down to the walls that are being built. Is that not so?
That's right. The walls being built.
So why have you been, as it were, toying with it? We don't seem to have committed to be that committed and focused in completing these projects within good time enough.
For the Blekusu Sea Defense Project, for which the first phase was completed in 2019, our ministry received proposal for the second phase. Hydro has done the evaluation, and our ministry and the Ministry of Finance, is making efforts to find money to undertake the second phase. For looking at what we experience here, I wouldn't say that it has taken too long. It's unfortunate we have this happening, but I know our ministry, the Ministry of Works and Housing, and the Ministry of Finance are making great efforts to continue. And in fact, so far under our coastal protection works, we've been protecting maximum of 5-kilometer stretch. But for the second phase of the Blekusu, we intend to implement 8-kilometer stretch. And in fact, this has been made known to the public for some time now. So in fact, this indicates the seriousness our ministry attaches to the second phase of the Blekusu Sea Defense Project.
Okay, let's hear Selom and Philip Nari. What do you have to say about why we are where we are today, despite having identified long ago that this is the solution. We know the solution. And we have actually commenced projects to implement the solution. Why are we where we are still? Yes, sir.
Something.
Yes.
I would not say we have identified the solution completely. We are identifying the solution, and I think that is one of the problems. Let me start by looking from policy perspective. Coastal erosion, coastal inundation, flooding has a lot of environmental consequences. Here is the case in Ghana. We have the HSD, Hubert's place, being under the Ministry of Works and Housing, not in direct relation to the Environment Ministry. To me, that creates a slight problem from the perspective of management. It would have been a good idea if we had the Hydrological Services Authority in place now, in which sense it would take the agency slightly from being under the ministry and the ministry control to slightly autonomous with more environmental inputs where we can manage things better. That is the first thing. And I know the bill has gone up and down and they are supposed to pass it, but up to now we still have it as a small desk under the Ministry of Works and Housing. To me, from policy perspective, that's the first problem. Now, the second problem, the second issue is in all human endeavors, if you want to solve a problem, you first identify the problem and then you plan towards it. It looks to me as if the planning, the identification of the problem is a bit deficient in the case of Ghana. Taking other global examples into perspective, you would expect that by now we would have a shoreline management plan in place in Ghana. It is a plan for managing the shoreline. It is integral to coastal areas management plan. A lot of serious countries, shorelines that they treasure, tend to have it. Then within this plan, you have programs for what you do to each sector of the coastline. For instance, when the Keta Sea Defense Wall was put up, immediately academics said that you are going to have problem in Blekusu, all the way to Aplau. It was going to happen. It's called the downdrift effect. It is standard science. We know this, and Hubert knows this, and Philip knows this. So if we had a plan in place, we would have started planning since then. Completion was 2004, what to do next for the downdrift effect. We don't seem to have put in a shoreline management plan, which should have been for the entire coastline of Ghana. And then we even shared with our neighbors, Togo and Cote d'Ivoire, for transboundary effects of this. So I think that is a major thing that we need to start looking at seriously if we are going to solve our erosion and flooding problems. In fact, the shoreline management plan is defined as a plan that limits or minimizes the risk, the combined risk of flooding and erosion on the coastline. Otherwise, our sea defense projects are going to become ad hoc. It's going to be like it's a flooding event in Keta, so let's build a defense wall for them. There is one in Ada, which happened a couple of years ago. Let's build a defense wall for them, and so on and so forth, forgetting about the interaction between whatever we are doing and the adjacent coastlines next to it. So we need to start looking at that seriously. Our solutions also need, in my opinion, to be science-based. When we make this identification, this difference, that our solutions need to be science-based. A lot of times people don't get it. They say, well, we are using a lot of technology in solving the problems, but it's different from engineering and science-based. Engineers are trained to go and solve problems. They go to the field, they hear what the problems you have for them, they look at the cost of solving the problem and they solve it. I mean, I'm one, so I know. But then again, I'm a scientist. Science-based means that you have studied the environment, look at the causative factors that is responsible for the problem you are seeing, and hence pushing the engineers to the most optimal solution that would, bring long-term benefits to the coastline. For the science part, we have been seriously lacking in that field. Hence, when the problem comes, we usually get a foreign player like Amandi, like Great Lakes, who come to Ghana, do not even have a very good understanding of our geomorphology, of our socio-cultural values, how we look at the coastline. And they throw in something. And we feel like, well, it is from outside, we've done it for us. So the buy-in is not there. So I think we need to do a home-based or home-brewed science-based solution to our project. In some areas, simple things would solve the problem. In some areas, we need a big sea defense wall. And then I don't know whether we're going to talk about the types of defense mechanisms we've been doing for flood control in Ghana.
Okay. So let's hear Philip quickly, and then return to that, because tied to that, and before we wrap up on this segment and move on to the issues of the economy and social justice, there is the question of whether we should actually continue this sea defense thing, rather than, because it does appear we are losing the fight in trying to fight the sea. And that the proper thing may be, to spend those huge amounts of money we hear, millions of dollars. Of course, we know, again, that some of this money will go into the corruption. But is there not a way to look at using a chunk of the money for proper resettlement of the people far away from the place of danger? So I'd like you to end on that when Philip gives us his take about why we are where we are, when we appear to have identified the solution and have been on the implementation. Yes, Philip.
All right. I think Salam has said all, and basically, if it's the problem, we've not really 100% identified the solution, like you said. Because if it is so, like we would have an integrated plan in place, like you said, and we would have known that some places maybe it's just going into maybe move the people away from, because we know that area, no matter what you do, it will still flood. Some areas to just be maybe just nourish the place, and then some places just elevate the place and go on. So I think that is a major issue. If you just go, like I said, just go in, there's a problem here, you go and intervene. It doesn't solve the problem. You transfer the problem to other places, and that is something that we should be investing in. Long-term monitoring should be in place along our coast. If that is in place, then we can, when there's an issue, then we can say, okay, putting this and this together, let's do this intervention at this place. So that is so I think that we should, as a nation, invest in long-term monitoring along our coast. It will go a long way to help us in our interventions.
Right. So maybe concluding with you, up to also Ansah, tell us, shouldn't we use this to look at the nationwide preparedness? Not only NADMO, shouldn't there be other ways, better than just NADMO, getting ready for something to happen and then they come sprinkle some Tampico and mattresses at people?
Yes, I think Salam pointed to that. We should have a national body or something in place that, okay, which has representatives of all this, that which is looking at just the coastline, what should be done. So, like I said, let's start from having data in place, long-term monitoring in place. Let's look at the various types of beach, what is happening there, what needs to be done. And then if we have those things in place, as a nation, not just at piecemeal, at community level, okay, this is happening here, this is happening. If we have it as a nation in place, we have a body in place looking at coastal zone management or the shoreline management, I would say that is the way to go.
All right.
And it will help us. Yes.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jason Kwashiga. He has his PhD in marine science with the Institute for Environment and Sanitation Studies, University of Ghana. Now, Selom Jacko Ababio, MD, Kelly Engineering Consult Limited, and former lecturer in coastal engineering and oceanography, University of Ghana. My question is, are we prepared, or we are just an ADMO approach, and the approach is after the fact, go and distribute some mattresses and get people some food?
Well, I mean, clearly we are not very prepared for this because we don't have a plan in place for this. We mentioned the climate change angle and the adaptation strategies. We have not put those things in place. I made a prediction that this is going to continue. 2 years ago or 3 years ago, it happened in Greater Accra region. We spoke about it, it went quiet, and we are here again. We are not adequately prepared. We need to put in plans, anticipate what is going to happen, start putting mechanisms in place to prevent that. Talking about relocation, relocation is also very expensive, just like coastal protection. But there's a difference. If you protect a portion of your shoreline, the value of that shoreline keeps growing with time. That sandbar is going to become more and more valuable as time goes on. Okay. It is important that we protect such areas. And we are proposing a harbor even for that area. It has become more important. However, let's put in the right plan, the right mechanism so that we can protect this part of our nation, build it, put the policies in place, have a coastal environment that a lot of us tend to visit and, enjoy it. That is what I think is critical about this. We could go into different ways of protecting it.
Sorry, but talking about harbor that you mentioned, don't we get into these activities with for example, with the port expansion in Tema and Takoradi, and the landing beaches that we are doing, don't they end up displacing the seawater and causing the levels to rise? You noted earlier, as we have found from the issue of the climate change, that we are already dealing with coastal areas that are the lowest of all the shorelines.
Yes, the academic in me would like to correct something that you said quickly. Putting up harbors and landing sites would not increase the sea level. That is not what causes the sea level. That is a different mechanism to global climate change. However, once you do any intervention in the coastal environment, it will have its positive and negative aspects. For instance, erosion around Tema New Town all the way to maybe even Boone is quite connected to the construction of the Tema port, and they have bought a brand of that construction. The new port, I'm made to understand, which is managed by MPS, has put in monitoring mechanisms to make sure that any effect of that construction, they'll monitor it. That's the kind of thing we talk about. So yes, once you put in all those structures, we have a problem. However, what you do is, if you have a general national plan of what you want to do with your shoreline, then if a private developer, a government agency, or even a local authority says that let us build a harbor here, then we know that this harbor would cause X amount of problems. Hence, it's a good idea or not a good idea. And then when it's been built, we look for funds as to how to protect the rest of the country, which will probably be inhabited by poor people who will not very much benefit from that harbor as the rich people who are far away. We need to put that kind of planning in place if we want to, develop our coastline. The coast is a beautiful place. The science has grown. We can protect it. We can even advance it, move the sea forward, if that is what we choose to do. It doesn't change anything. It's not a bad thing to advance the shoreline, in a country. That can be done. But it must be done within a framework. That's like entire coastal plan.
All right.
With science-based approach, with monitoring and evaluation.
All right.